Okay, so today we're going to be talking about collision detection, and we're just going to make a really quick application that's going to use some collision detection algorithms inside of WPF. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go online and I'm going to find some images to set up my my stage. So I first go and I find this brick, and in order to find that I just put bricks in there and I search for that and I found that. And the second thing I found is this game character, and I just go ahead and click that and save that and use this game character inside of the application, and I can drag that inside my application after saving it. So I'm gonna first get an image, bring it over here, drag that to a particular size, and I'm gonna call that what did I call that? Call it hit me. Okay. And then I go ahead and grab another image. Call that player A. So I have this image and I have this image. One's the player, one is going to be the wall. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to change the source. Close the comment, go to appearance, it's brushes. Come over here. This is what I'm looking for right here. So this is where I'm going to put the image, but first I'm going to drag it into the project. Here after downloading. And the brick. Oh, I'm sorry, now the player. Alright, so I have this brick and I have the player. Go to here to the brick, and that's the name that I'm looking for. Go here to the source and change that to brick. Okay, so now that we got the image source set to the opacity, we're going to go down to the appearance, open up the appearance, go down to the source, open up the bricks, and then kind of do this. And if you wanted to, you can have it stretch up here also. You can have it depending on how you want it to fill, or the tiling mode. Here, sorry. So hold down Alt, drag. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and set up the image for the player, doing the exact same thing. Okay, so now that I have the player, now let's go ahead and make the player move. So we're going to go behind. We got to name this player A, right? go to code behind, and let's talk about what we need to even start doing any sort of collision detection or making this game work out. We know we're going to need a timer, right? So we're going to go ahead and dim ourselves a timer. We're probably going to need a timer that stops a timer, because we're going to use that actually to stop the player from moving. And over here, I need to change this. And I'm going to import that. And we're going to need a current key, because we're going to be moving the player with keys. That's going to be a string value. And I'm going to need a player. It's going to be a rectangle, that's why I'm making it a rect. Not a rectangle, it's going to be a rect. Possibly I'll call the other rectangle player B, just for the sake of doing it. And I'm going to need a speed. It's going to be a double. I'm just going to make it 1. And I'm going to need other speeds, down, back. I'll leave all those. Actually, I'm going to make back -1, because that's, I'm going to use that to bounce him off of whatever he hit. Now let me kind of define some borders. So I'm going to say dim. He's going to be actually, let's make those doubles. Okay, and I'm going to need a bottom. And I'm going to need a location, a new location, Y and X, so after I move the character, I know where the character is after he or she is moved. So I say and I'm going to do the same thing with X. So let's now go ahead and initialize the window, and I'm going to do that with subnew. And if you're not familiar with subnew, you can go back to some of my old videos, and I talk about classes and stuff like that, and how this whole thing works. But for right now, let's just understand that this is what's going to run immediately when the application starts. I'll take this part out. and I'm going to go ahead and instantiate a lot of these things. So I need my timer stop. Okay, so I know I'm going to need these here, and I'm just being a little bit lazy here. And so now I have those timers, and now I'm going to go ahead and set the intervals of the first timer. And intervals takes a time span. And we're going to set that time span from milliseconds. And then we're going to give it per every 1 millisecond. And now we're going to create our handlers. So go ahead and say add handler me dot key down. This is going to be for the key press, and I'm going to say address of, and I'm going to type out procedure that doesn't exist yet. So it doesn't exist yet, and what VB will do is go ahead and create it for me. And here it is down here. And I want to go ahead and do the same thing with key up. So I have my key down, now my key up. So basically what this is saying, let me change this on key up here. Basically what this is saying, on any key that's pressed, okay, on any key that's pressed down, this is going to happen. On any key that's released, this here will happen. So I have those. I don't really have to worry about putting anything in there just yet. What I want to go ahead and do now is set my borders as left and right. So I'm going to say left border equals, and remember that's from the top. Border, oops. And I'm going to set the left border and not top. I want the left border and the top border. So I'm setting the borders of the whole frame itself. So remember, left and top represent this area all the way up here. So those two are 0. So it's a Cartesian system, except it is upside down, so you have to do the proper calculations to accommodate for that. So I'm going to right border. So the right border is me width. So the right border is the width of the window, and the bottom border is the height of the window. And when I'm using this keyword here, me, that's like saying this. It's like saying this class, which is this window. Okay, so I think we're done with instantiating everything. Even though this doesn't really do anything except it creates these handlers right here, I'm going to run it just to make sure nothing goes crazy. Good, so everything shows up right and it runs. So now what I want to go ahead and do is add what I need to put inside the key down. So on the key down, what I want to do is I want to capture all the keys that come in, and then I'll decide what to do with it later. So I'm going to call my current key. and that's going to equal the e dot key dot to string. So every time a key comes into here, I grab it, I convert it to a string, and I store it inside of this variable that we set earlier up here, current key. That's why I set that as a string. Now, once that key is pressed, I'm going to go dt timer. I'm going to go ahead and start my timer. Let's start. Okay. That's all we want with that. And so you can kind of guess what we want to do with the key up, right? We want to stop the timer. Oops. Dot stop dot. There we go. You know, and come to think of it, I want to reset the movement of my character. So I'm going to need something that will default, put everything back to where it was. So I'm going to need a reverse flow and maybe a default. So that way when he's pushed back and I change the variables, I'm going to change them right back to where they once were. So I'm going to call that default. I can call it default direction. Yeah. Default direction. And then I'm going to have this make it for me. And I have it here. Inside the default direction, I'm going to have the forward speed, the up speed, down speed, and back speed. So I'm going to have this forward speed, down speed. Oh, this is not right. Forward speed, down speed, back speed. I think I'm missing one here. So I want something called up speed. Alright, yeah, so I'm going to put these in a default. Right, so these are the original speeds, so I can always kind of go back to this. Okay, good. Now, now I want to go ahead and create a reverse speed, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste that. Yeah, so, and basically what this is going to be is the forward is going to be one way, and I'm just going to alternate these things here. Alright, so now what we have is we have this key up and we have this key down, and what I'm going to do on the key up, yeah, we're going to go ahead and go back to the default before we stop that. Then we're going to stop it as it comes back down. So yeah, I bump into a wall, he's going to go in his normal direction, or he's going to bounce back, and then when I release it he can have his default speed back to where it once was. So from there, let's go ahead and talk about our key press events, or the player update event. So we're going to need to go ahead and create a handler actually to go ahead and update our player, and that's going to be pretty much doing the same thing as this. but it's going to be the DT timer, the one up here, the one that we set here. It's going to be this DT timer, and it's going to be the click event, the tick event, and this is going to be called update player. Alright, and then I'm going to go ahead and create update player. It's all the way down here. Bring it up here, just so we can see it a little bit better. Okay, so, and I probably should have called it this right here, but it's too late now. Okay, so we're going to create a case statement. And this is going to look at the current key, okay, whatever key is as pressed. And I can say if the case is left, I'm going to do something, and when I do that something, I can just do all the other cases here. Hold on. So I have my left, right, the up, down. When I click left, I'm going to have the player A, and this will seem weird, but this is how you got to do it with WPF. You got to deal with margins. And I'm using the backspeed on this because we want him to go to the left. Remember, the axis is a little bit different on this. It's upside down in a way and flipped over. Well, not, it's flipped on the y-axis. So while we're coding this, we're always keeping that in mind when doing any kind of calculations. Okay, so this should work, and let's run it and see if it works. Okay, so we got that working. He's moving. He's not even stopping. So as soon as I press that, that timer starts. That timer goes. Okay, good. So let's try this one here. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy this one here. Let's try the right. So instead of backwards, and this is why we named these properly, because we now know what to put here to be forward. And we're setting all these other margins basically to 0. So we're only moving one particular margin on this, and we're keeping the top exactly the same. So if I go forward, he keeps moving forward, but he's a ghost. I go back, he can move back, up and down, just stops it because when I click up, there's nothing in there, and when I click down, there's nothing in there, so that's why it'll stop there. But that's not what we want, so we're going to go ahead and fill those two up also. And on the up, we already know, if we name them properly, we can leave this left alone, player.left. But what we want to do is get rid of this So we leave that whichever way it is. And we want to go ahead and update the top portion. So that will be the up and down. And if you push the up key, if that's the key that's returned, then we want this to be player.margin.top plus the up. Yeah. Up speed. And I'm going to keep testing these. Every time I write something, I'm going to keep testing them, so I'm not going forward for no particular reason. So see, this is why you test it, because when I push up, it goes down. So we're going to have to change this. So I can go here, speed, it's going back down. Hold on, let's see what's. Okay, so I'm gonna change this one here because the default up speed actually should be -1. And the opposite of that would be here. Let's see. And then this up speed, yeah, that should be -1. Okay. There we go. Alright, so now we have our up speed, and then let's go try the down. And so you see why we test these things. See what happens here. Okay. Let's get the down speed. That one's correct. And this one's not. Right, so that's default. And this is. Good. So now we got him moving in all directions. And he won't stop now. Now he'll just keep going on to infinity. So now we need some way to stop him from moving. And the way we're going to do that is when we release, we can actually stop him by stopping the timer. And the reason why this isn't necessarily working the way when I push the up, because right here we put the DT timer _ stop. What we really wanted was the DT timer .stop, so when I release the button, the timer is going to stop. So see, now when I release it, it stops. And I could have it to where he goes a few seconds and then stops. But for right now, if I hold it down, the timer keeps on going. And when I release it, the timer stops. So there's a few ways we could do the collision detection. And I've been looking at 2 different ways to do this. Let's just go over one so it won't be too confusing. I'm gonna go ahead and start a private sub or a function because I need some return value. And let's call that collision. Yeah. And then I'm going to return a Boolean. So it's going to be true or false depending on what I get back. And for right now, I make sure it returns false because there are no collisions until there is a collision. That's the default return for now because I don't like that error there. So what we're going to be looking at is creating a as our character exists, he exists inside of this rectangle, but what I want to be able to do is create a rectangle around this rectangle that follows this rectangle. And so as that rectangle is following the character, that rectangle will be what I'm doing the collision detection on, not necessarily on the image itself. but a box I draw around that image. So first I need to go ahead and ask for the objects inside of here. So I'm going to say, and we know that we're using images. If you were using something else, then that's what you would put here, whether it was boxes or people, boxes or characters or images, or any object, it doesn't matter. So I'm gonna go. I'm calling this player A that rect. So that's not player A. It's just going to be a new rectangle. Rect, not rectangle. There's a difference between rect and rectangle. For right now, let's just use rect. Makes things a little bit easier in the long run. So I can go ahead and get set player A rect to the character itself. So what we have here is that I have this player A rect, and probably what I can do is I can just pull this whole margin concept from up here. I can say that it equals a new thickness right here, like that, and then I can put that here. Oh no, because we can't use the thickness, so let's just do it this way. We'll do it singularly, right, because the thickness won't return double. Alright, so we'll use the left directly, and then we're going to do the same thing with the Y. And this is going to be the margin top. Now what I want to be able to do is create the size of the rect. And that's going to be the rectangle. Now you don't do width. If you do width, it won't show up. But so what you want to look for is the margin. No, I'm sorry, the rectangle A. Dot. Like if you do this, you're going to run into problems. But you want the one that's called actual width. And I'm going to do the same thing with the height. So what we're looking at, the actual width, the actual height is different than the width and the height, because the actual width and height are going to return the rendered width and height of the element, and not simply the width and height that it exists inside the program itself, because that can change as the rendering is taking place. Alright, so now what we want to be able to do is do the same thing with rectangle, the next rectangle, which is going to be this one, because we're going to create another rectangle around these walls here. So I can pretty much just take all of this, copy it, paste it, and change this to B. So you see, I was thinking ahead, and that's why I was lazy enough to name this B. Okay, so alright, so we have both of those, and now this is where the bulk of the collision detection is going to happen, so I'm going to use an if statement. And this could get a little bit confusing, but basically it's alternating, okay? So keep that in mind. I'm going to first say player B, rectangle X. Where is that? The X is less than player A, rectangle X, plus player A, rectangle width. That's the first thing. That has to be true. And then we're going to go to the next thing that has to be true. Alright, so the second thing that has to be true is pretty much this thing, except with X. I mean Y. So we did the X, and now we're doing the Y's. And this is going to be flipped here. So this is going to be player B. Let me type this out so it's not too confusing. Close this all up here. So that plus that has to be greater than player A. Right, and then we're going to do the same thing with the Y. So this is the part I actually probably should have copied. So player B, Y, player B, Y, and then this is going to be Y over here. And instead of the width, it's going to be the height. And then down here, it's going to be rectangle Y plus the height. It's going to be greater than player A, rectangle Y. And I can get rid of this part. So if this and this and this and this, if all of those things are true, then you're going to return true. So if it returns true, none of this is being ran. So I could simply just leave this here, but I want to make this a bit more clear. Turn true. So I'm going to put an else here. Let's just write something to the console. Plus the object. And I can probably get rid of this one here. Alright, so we want to make sure all this stuff works, and the only way to make sure it works is to actually test it, and we're going to go ahead and test it inside of our loop. So we're going to go here inside of our key press, and we have to put it here. So I'm going to say if collision detect. Now I'm going to feed it the player A. And then I'm going to feed it this player, which is called hit me. So if that happens, then I'm going to write the line here. Oh, no. If this returns true, it wasn't a hit. Let's see. And I'm going to reverse the flow here. Reverse direction. So if there was a hit, I go ahead and reverse the direction here. And this is in the left, so I just want to see if it works on the left. And now I can go forward, and then he'll bounce up against the wall like this. Now all I have to do really is detect the top.